Hello ladies and gentlemen, the Fuzz is here. Patch 0.95 is now online and it brings some very interesting changes, both in terms of the interface, but more importantly, the cards themselves. So the first thing you might notice is, wait, this looks a little different. Yeah, there's these nice little images on the sides. That's actually pretty cool. I think it adds a little bit of a mystique to the game, but I don't know. But anyways, let's get straight down to business. The cards. There have been a few changes to the cards, but they are big changes. Basically, they took a few bad cards and decided to make them, well, pretty interesting to say the least. Let's jump right into it. First of all, Burke now has a cooldown of 3 from 4, which is good. 4 was a little bit ridiculous. Made it basically the longest cooldown along with the basic Despina. For an ability that's decent, but not amazing. I mean, compared to the Firestorm ability that Zash has, and you can pretty clearly see which ability is stronger. So this will help him a little bit become at least a decent hero. I'm not sure how much it'll help him, but hey, a little bit of help is good too, right? Now the cards themselves. First up, Path to Transcendence. Big change on this one. It's now 3 mana instead of 1, so it's quite an increase. But first of all, you no longer pay them mana to put something under Path. You now just do it at the end of turn automatically if you choose. And second of all, you only pay the 1 mana when you want to put stuff on the board, or when Path is destroyed, stuff goes on the board. So basically what this means is you can have multiple things under Path to Transcendence without paying mana for them. So you can have several things come out with extra counters. More importantly, if the Path is destroyed, you get those guys on the board with the Might counters and with Swift. That is a huge deal because the Path's main weakness was the fact that if it gets hit by a unicorn or something, well, you not only lose that for free, but you lose any creatures that were underneath it, resulting in ridiculous advantage for your opponent. Now, it's not so bad. You can actually play it, put something underneath it, and have the assurance that you're going to get your value. You're not going to get screwed on it. Now, one thing that needs to be noted here, if Path to Transcendence gets hit by Landslide, the creatures underneath it will die. They will go to the graveyard because Transcendence isn't being destroyed, it's being bounced. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But then Landslide is not really seeing much play. But maybe it will start seeing some play because, hey, it's a ridiculous counter to Path to Transcendence. We'll have to see. But the fact that it doesn't get hit by Unicorn, that's something. And I like the fact that you can have multiple creatures under it. You could create some ridiculous scenarios when you put 3 or 4 creatures underneath it. They all come out with extra counters, and then if you have Hermelian as your hero, you get like 4 creatures on the board. They have Swift. You use the hero power, and then you just do massive damage to your opponent. So I think this change is pretty awesome. It's interesting enough to experiment with. I certainly will be experimenting with it a little bit to see what happens. So yeah, good job, devs. This is a really cool card. It's the kind of card we want to see more of. Next up, this arm. This one is just a little change. The debuff is now until end of turn instead of only during combat. This is actually a nice buff because it means you can just use it and then assassinate something. You don't have to do it during combat specifically. Just use it and then assassinate it without even having to fight. And also, it does work with Hermelian because you get 2 turns of attacking, so both combats, the creatures will have 0 attack. That's minor, but mainly being able to use it anytime and not just during combat. And the combination with Assassinate is really nice. So a fair change to this card. Spectral Boride now starts with 3 energy, and so has 3 attack to start, so it's a 3/3 with 3 speed. That's a nice little buff. It makes it a little bit more dangerous, being able to pick off library guards and what have you. But I still don't think it'll see much play because it's just too expensive. But it's at least a consideration. And if the energy theme becomes a thing, Spectral Boride might just make it because it's a lot more solid on its own. And it'll make it less dreadful in trials as well. Dust Titan. Oh my goodness. Welcome to Dust Titan 3.0. So this bad boy is costing us 4 mana with 3 aspects. And he starts out as a 3/3 with 2 speed and has 4 energy by default. And then he gains 1 energy at the start of your turn. And then you can spend 2 energy to shock something. And whenever he gains energy, he gets a Might emblem. So this is basically a much better version of the Titan because you can now shock stuff without having to actually destroy the Titan, because his power is no longer tied to the energy that he has. Likewise, if he comes into play while you have the charged Boride, he only gets 1 Might emblem and not like 10, because the charged Boride had 10 energy. Because he only gains a Might emblem when you gain energy, regardless of how much it actually is. But the point is, you can play him on 4, and then, you know, you can shock 2 things right away. And then he can stay on the board and start growing. So, pretty awesome creature. You know, a good boss monster for Wisdom. I like the card. I think it's really, really cool. And it's going to be stronger in Trials as well. It was already pretty good there, but hey, now it's even better. The Offering Yard Priest. This is the new Flamebringer Shaman, and oh my god, what a change. So if you remember, the previous Shaman was a 1/3 with 1 speed, a dreadful stat line, with a kind of an interesting effect of doing 1 damage to your opponent for every Shaman that was in your graveyard when this is played. Which was kind of lame, because on one hand it's a dreadful card, on the other hand you can just lose to by your opponent playing like 3 of these in a row and doing like 18 burn damage or something. Now, the effect, he gets +1 attack and health for each totem that you control and in your graveyard. So that's actually really, really strong, because generally you'll have totems survive on the board if nothing else, and when they're in the graveyard, this guy could easily be something like a 5/5 for 2 mana, making him really, really strong. Basically a great mid-game play by Shamans if their board gets wiped or if their totems don't do anything. So this is a step in the right direction to making Shamans good, or, you know, at least playable. This guy is a pretty strong Shaman now. I still don't think it's quite enough to make Shamans a thing, but it's a start. You know, it just needs a little bit more, you know, maybe buff the totems or add a new good totem and maybe 1 more good Shaman, and you might have something there. I certainly look forward to it. I want to play Shamans. That's a really cool theme. It looks like their time may yet come. Hooray for Shamans. Alright, Word of Power, the card which I had previously dubbed as the worst card in Spellweaver. Now, the effect is each hero gains an empty mana crystal for each of your Dominion levels. So rather than getting a little bit of mana for the turn and then getting gimped, you actually super ramp your mana. Think of the Power Surge card, which just gives you 1 mana crystal for 2 mana. This one, you can get multiple crystals and you draw a card, but your opponent also gets these mana crystals. So basically, the idea of this is to set up a Cataclysm. You play this something like turn 4, or even turn 3, and you're actually setting up for a Cataclysm, being able to play it. And that's pretty good, but giving your opponent mana crystals is not a brilliant idea, really, especially if they're a control deck, because then they can do more shenanigans. Because it's symmetrical, I don't know how good it really is. I think it's a lot better than it was, but still slightly dubious. Maybe if you give the opponent 1 less mana crystal than you, then it'd be a little bit better, because ramping your opponent is bad. And what you have to consider is that if you play this on turn 3, your opponent will then have 5 mana on his turn to do what he wants. Now, yeah, if you set up a Cataclysm right after that, okay, that works out. But if not, you're actually helping your opponent. So, a very cool design. I just think it needs a little bit of a tweak to have less of a positive impact for your opponent. Just give him 1 less mana crystal than what you get. And but at least 1. So you don't just play it on turn 2, and then you get a mana crystal and they don't, and you redraw, which would make Power Surge completely worthless. At least your opponent gets at least 1 mana crystal, and then you get, you know, the number of Dominion levels that you have. Actually, yeah, just leave it at that. Your opponent just gets 1 mana crystal, and you get whatever number of Dominion levels you have. And that, I think, might be pretty cool. That would make the Word of Power a really interesting card. But hey, I'm glad it's changed. It's playable now. That's something. And the last card that was changed, Mr. Blood-Seeking Mutant. This gentleman, I originally said was just really horribly designed. And it looks like the devs listened, because now it's actually really cool. So first of all, he got a stat downgrade to a 2/2, but that's not a problem because the effect he can now activate on the turn that he's played. And that's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal, because you can play him and then immediately kill a small creature and he becomes a 3/3. Second of all, he no longer returns to hand if you have no targets. Thank God, that was so annoying and made him basically unplayable. Now it's like a legitimately cool card because you can kind of use him as small removal, and he enters as a 3/3. You know, it's a decently sized body. That also removes a threat, and he can continue to grow while weakening your opponent's board. So I actually really like this card. I'm not sure if it'll fit in any decks, but it's something you can consider now. And it definitely in Trials, this card will be really, really strong just because of the value that it's going to get. Just by playing it, killing off that vital back row creature and creating a big threat on the board. Yeah, this guy's gonna be quite the rage in Trials. So that's it for the cards. There are also a few other changes I didn't mention. I'll go through them real quick. The chat, the being able to chat with other players. Okay, I have it right here. You have a friends list here. You can actually search for people to add them to you know, your list. I'll just search for one right now. Boltor. And then, you know, he has to answer and whatever. Now, what would happen if I did this? Boltor 6. Ah, player with a name doesn't exist. Is it case sensitive? Probably is. Oh, wait, that was a horrible misspell. Oh, no, it is case sensitive. So, once you have that, you can actually chat with people. You just go to here, and then you click on the person you want to talk to. And yeah, now this actually, this blocks the end of turn button. Like, hang on, I'll show you real quick. What? Oh yeah, this deck doesn't have 60 or more cards. There you go. Let's see how it works. So this is the chat box, and it just disappeared, but whatever. So this is the end turn button right here, right? Now it's covered, and you can't move this, unfortunately. That's a little annoying. It's not that big of a deal, but if they just move this somewhere else, or like made this a little smaller, so it doesn't cover the enter button, or move the button like here, somewhere to the left, then that'd be pretty cool. That's an easy fix, so that's not a big deal. Let me just resign this game. In addition to that, we have a search option for the cards. If you go to your collection, quick search. You can just type in the name of something like Karthus. There he is. Now, as I understand it, it actually searches for the words in the flavor text. So if I put in guild, which is also a word in Karthus's flavor, it'll search them out, which is a little silly, but that's already been addressed in the forums and will be fixed, so that's not a big deal. And it's just good to have, especially as we get more cards. Being able to search for specific cards will be very helpful to speed up deck building quite a bit. Other than that, the heroes, the new heroes have their icons ready, like they look as they're supposed to look. And also, one thing that's been bugging us for a long time, the server now disconnects you if you're inactive for 45 minutes. So you're no longer going to be disconnected in the middle of a video like it happens to me, Boltor, and Jodo all the time. Now you got more time, so that's pretty good. So that's it for all the changes. Good stuff, not as sweeping as the previous patch, but still, the few cards that got changed, they were changed in a massive way, and that's good. So that basically, all of those cards are at least interesting. They don't all have to be good. They just have to be interesting, and interesting cards is what makes the game interesting. I hope that when they release however many cards they were going to release, that they try to keep that in mind. It's okay to release bad cards, as long as they're not just strictly inferior to something, as opposed to just having a maybe not a great mechanic or an inconsistent mechanic. Just interesting cards in general, and they can be bad, that's fine, but as long as it adds a little spice to the game, that's fine. And also, whenever there's a new patch or new cards are introduced, you never know when a certain card is suddenly going to become good. Totems and Shamans are just waiting for a chance to fly off. The energy theme is just waiting for a chance to fly off. I anticipate nothing but good things coming. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. I will see you in the next video. And Get ready for the Asperia Cup number 3! Hooray! If we get enough people to play in it. Alright. See you guys.